We never thought it would happen. But, lo and behold, Urgot has received direct buffs. Urgot was initially slated for a sort of light rework, but somewhere down the line they decided to give him a full rework, like they have planned for Scion and Poppy. That means that the rework will take more time, but it won't be just a few skill changes. So, in the meantime, they've given him a couple quality of life changes, aimed to increase Urgot's fluidity and clean up his act, and they plan a set of potential follow-up changes to add a bit more power in case it's needed. So, going into the Rift, the first thing you'll notice is that Urgot's Acid Hunters now have a skill shot indicator. That means clarity, right? Well, it also means mid-patch appreciation existential issues. This bugger gets in the way of absolutely everything. It undermines Urgot's fluidity by adding additional unnecessary steps, which notably increases the time it takes to fire Acid Hunters. Seriously. This skill shot indicator is like putting on training wheels, and just as inhibiting. It takes extra time to aim a skill shot and fire it. Usually this is fine because skill shots are important to hit and generally have a fairly long cooldown, which necessitates putting a little thought into where they'll go and when. Urgot's Qs, however, while they're important to hit, have an incredibly short cooldown, between 1.2 seconds and 2 seconds. On top of this, it can already be difficult to fire the maximum amount in the duration of one lock-on. Adding an additional step simply worsens things, sometimes allowing you only enough time for 2 Acid Hunters when you should have been able to fire 3, or 3 when you should have been able to fire 4. This considerably lowers Urgot's damage output. Thankfully, there's a way around it. Quick Cast. If you don't already use this, it's a setting that allows you to fire your abilities on key press. You can activate it by going into your hotkey settings and under the first tab setting your skills to quick cast on the keys that you regularly use. I recommend quick casting Q and maybe Noxian Corrosive Charge, but do not under any circumstances quick cast Urgot's ultimate. You need to see the range and you must ult with care, else you may accidentally swap a Nasus directly into your team. There are 2 types of quick casting. First, you can display skill shot indicators by ticking the box at the bottom of hotkeys. This sets your skills to cast when you let go of the key, so you can make use of skill shot indicators. However, this doesn't really help us so much, as it adds a notable delay, and because movement in between Acid Hunters is essential, it may result in a number of cancelled Acid Hunters because of accidental right-clicks. Therefore, that limits us to one option. Quick cast, without range indicators. It really sucks that we're backed into this corner, and for those of us who have specific preferences, it may take some time to get used to. On top of these things, it's pretty annoying to have to use special settings just to play Urgot without risking a major loss of fluidity and damage. Moving on to happier things, Riot changed Acid Hunter in 2 more ways. Firstly, Urgot now receives 20 mana back when Acid Hunter kills something. And this is incredible for the laning phase. Now you have a much simpler time when pushed up to your tower, as it is much more difficult to run out of mana. And now you don't have to start with a Fairy Charm and a whole bundle of potions to survive and thrive through the early laning phase. It's still an option, but instead you can viably start with a Longsword, Crystalline Flask, or Doran's Blade. Acid Hunter was also changed to check for lock-ons at both the beginning and the end of the cast, as opposed to only the beginning. This makes quick locked-on follow-up Acid Hunter shots possible to pull off before Noxian Corrosive Charge arrives upon its target, and it's very powerful because it saves lock-on time. Next up is the auto-attack projectile speed increase from 1300 to 1600. This really helps with CSing, and makes interlaced auto-attack and Acid Hunter harassment much faster and much easier to pull off. Finally, Hyperkinetic Position Reverser has received a few minor changes. The mana cost was lowered from 120 down to 100, which can affect early all-ins, but doesn't really make much of a difference later on. More notably, the cooldown was reduced from a flat 120 to a gradually diminishing value, shredding off 10 seconds per rank. Now, at maximum rank with 40% CDR, it can be lowered to a 60-second cooldown. That will substantially increase Urgot's late game pickoff potential, as well as his survivability, as Hyperkinetic Position Reverser is great to use before taking a large burst of damage, and is even better at fulfilling that purpose now that the bonus armor and magic resistance is applied immediately, as opposed to after a 0.25-second delay. Then, there are also a few minor mechanical changes to his ultimate. After a successful channel, this doesn't work if it's cancelled, Urgot will avoid unit collision for 1 second. This helps a whole lot with dives, as minion block is a serious issue these days. Finally, removing the camera reorientation on a successful ultimate makes it a little less disorienting and much easier to follow up with accurate attacks. Now, the build. It's mostly the same, with a few minor revisions, and before you ask, Essence Reaver is still a no-go. It has little to no synergy with Urgot, and whatever it gives that you might want, it gives far too late. Even Riot agrees, in the new recommended item set, Essence Reaver is nowhere in sight. In fact, Riot did a really good job with Urgot's new item set, although it does lack in variability. I recommend starting with the Longsword. It substantially boosts your early game potential while still allowing you to pick up 3 potions. With the changes, it's easier now to forgo early mana for damage items, but you should still purchase a tier fairly early on, especially against enemies with strong sustain. Aside from that, if you're against a highly mixed team composition and need immediate defenses, so you can't afford to finish your Frozen Heart or Spirit Visage, and thus neglect necessary resistance values, then you should purchase a Giant Spell instead to build into either Warmog's Armor or Randuin's Omen. These, in total, are a collection of minor changes which will help Urgot players fulfill their many roles. Remember, however, that capitalizing on most of them requires a firm grasp of Urgot's mechanics and an active willingness to seek out opportunities. Basically, those who are already comfortable with the champion will benefit most from these changes. Therefore, I expect Urgot's win rate to gradually increase over time in the higher elos, and to increase perhaps a few percent in the lower elos. In the end, are these changes enough to bring Urgot back into competitive play? Maybe. It'll definitely be some time before teams begin to pick him up, but I'm sure we'll see our friendly neighborhood Crabgot somewhere down the road. In any case, let me know how you feel about the Urgot changes on Reddit or in the comment section below. I'd like to thank everyone for sticking with me for as long as you have, and for providing valuable constructive criticism along the way. Until next time, I'll see you on the Rift.